Visualize yourself in the Great Rift Valley 300 millennia ago. The atmosphere is heavy with humidity. Acacia trees punctuate a terrain that transitions from thick forests to expansive savannas. Far off, volcanic summits pierce in boundless firmament. The ground beneath you retains warmth from recent geological shifts. This very land is actively fracturing, giving birth to valleys, lakes, and diverse microclimates. Within this fragmented, ever-changing world, our species is taking its first breath. This wasn't a slow, silent emergence, but rather the result of unique pressures and opportunities converging in a way unparalleled anywhere else on the planet. Precisely 300,000 years ago, in this very setting, Homo sapiens came into existence. These were the initial individuals of our kind, your forebears, mine, and indeed, every human who has ever walked the earth. Yet, a compelling question arises, one that might hold your attention for just a little longer before this narrative gently guides you to slumber. Why this specific location? Why exclusively here? For if we consider the global landscape from hundreds of millennia past, Africa wasn't the sole continent boasting forests, nor was it the only region blessed with resources, flowing rivers, or plentiful wildlife. Our primate relatives, our evolutionary cousins, were present across numerous continents. Large apes, for instance, once wandered through the lands we now call Europe and Asia. The fundamental components necessary for human evolution were dispersed worldwide. Nevertheless, humankind originated from a single location, one continent, Africa. Each language you've ever encountered, be it Mandarin, Arabic, English, or Swahili, finds its roots in Africa. Every civilization that has ever flourished, from ancient Sumer to the Roman Empire and even contemporary New York, was established by the progeny of African migrants. All technological advancements, every artistic creation, each mathematical formula, and every narrative ever shared, sprang from intellects that developed in Africa. 7 billion individuals inhabit the earth today, preceded by untold billions throughout history. Each and every one of us carries Africa within our DNA, embedded in our very bones, and woven into the fundamental architecture of our brains. This is not an exaggeration. It is a verifiable genetic truth. But the question remains, why? Other landmasses possessed all the prerequisites for human evolution. Asia, for example, harbored primates, and quite advanced ones at that. Indeed, Europe was home to apes that exhibited bipedal locomotion. Meanwhile, South America witnessed its own distinct evolutionary experiments unfolding in isolation. The essential components were present in other regions. Therefore, what distinguished Africa? What unique qualities did this particular continent, specifically the regions of East and South Africa, possess that transformed it into humanity's birthplace? The explanation is far from straightforward. Such is often the case with evolutionary processes. There wasn't a solitary instant, no apparent benefit, nor any distinct rationale explaining why our ancestors would have evolved here and nowhere else. Instead, a confluence of factors, a veritable perfect storm of geological forces, climatic patterns, and sheer chance forged conditions, unparalleled anywhere else on the planet. And over the coming hours, yes, hours, as we delve deeply into this subject, ideal for easing into sleep, we shall investigate precisely what rendered Africa so unique. What was it that molded one lineage of primates into beings capable of language, artistic expression, abstract reasoning, and ultimately, space exploration? This narrative extends beyond mere evolution. This, in essence, is your story. Your individual tale of origin stretches back far beyond your parents, your grandparents, or even your distant forebears, from mere millennia past. Our lineage stretches back millions of years, a continuous succession of beings who survived, adapted, and innovated, all originating from Africa, at least initially. Each time you stand tall, you're adopting a stance that first developed on the African continent. When you speak, you're employing mental faculties honed over hundreds of millennia within that very continent. And whenever you tackle a challenge, envision the future, or conceive of something entirely new, you're utilizing intellectual instruments shaped by the African landscape. The narrative of how these capabilities emerged, tracing our journey from diminutive tree-dwelling primates to the Earth's preeminent species, is considerably more captivating than commonly understood. This saga commences 66 million years ago, following a cataclysmic asteroid strike that fundamentally reshaped life on our planet. The tale progresses with the advent of the earliest primates, minute beings who endured amidst the devastation of the dinosaur extinction. It chronicles their evolution, diversification, and dispersal across various landmasses, only to reveal the astonishing fact that most vanished everywhere except Africa. This history recounts the pivotal instant our forebears adopted an upright stance, liberating their hands and fundamentally altering their view of the world. It traces the expansion of the brain, the creation of implements, the mastery of fire, and the blossoming of both language and societal norms. Time and again, it demonstrates how Africa's distinctive surroundings compelled our ancestors to adjust, to devise new solutions, and to evolve into something greater. Furthermore, it clarifies why, upon Homo sapiens' eventual departure from Africa approximately 70,000 years ago, our species achieved such remarkable success, populating every global region in what amounts to a geological blink of an eye. However, we're moving a bit too quickly. This journey spans an immense duration. A period of 66 million years represents a time frame that is nearly unfathomable. To put this into context, the complete chronicle of documented human civilization, from Mesopotamia's earliest urban centers to the present day, encompasses merely 6,000 years. We are delving into a past that predates that by 11,000-fold. This narrative unfolds within geological strata, fossilized remains, and genetic signatures, which researchers interpret as a historical text inscribed in DNA. It's an account of species that emerged and vanished, of evolutionary trials that both triumphed and faltered, and of ecological shifts that created opportunities for certain organisms while sealing the fate of others. At the core of this entire process lies Africa, not merely a backdrop, but an engaged collaborator in our evolutionary trajectory. The continent itself molded our development. Its dramatic rift valleys, fluctuating climates, and diverse environmental tapestry with forests in one area and grasslands in another, and lakes emerging and receding over millennia generated both challenges and advantages in balanced proportion. Other landmasses offered constancy. Africa, conversely, possessed an inherent dynamism. While other continents featured homogeneous surroundings, Africa boasted immense variety. Other landmasses favored specialized adaptations. Africa, however, championed adaptability, and this very trait, as it happens, is the fundamental element defining our humanity. Yet, this is where the narrative becomes even more intriguing. And this is precisely where the enigma grows more profound. For humanity didn't solely originate in Africa. Indeed, higher primates, the anthropoids destined to become apes, and humans initially developed in Asia, approximately 40 million years ago. Precisely. Our ancient forebears first appeared in a different region. They journeyed to Africa, after which their Asian counterparts died out. What enabled primates to thrive and prosper in Africa, yet vanish from their initial Asian birthplace? What transformed Africa into a sanctuary while other landmasses proved to be evolutionary cul-de-sacs? The explanation encompasses climate, rivalry, and the distinct geological formations of Africa that fostered what researchers term evolutionary laboratories. These were secluded areas where groups could develop on their own, later coming together to exchange new ideas. This process included the emergence of the East African Rift System, an enormous geological formation that quite literally split the continent, giving rise to mountains, valleys, and lakes which broke up forests and fostered precisely the kind of setting where adaptability thrived. It also encompassed worldwide cooling periods that rendered large parts of Eurasia severe and subject to seasons, whereas Africa's location near the equator ensured consistent warmth throughout the year and diverse ecological regions. Furthermore, there's another factor at play, one more challenging to measure, yet just as crucial: sheer chance. The path of evolution is replete with unforeseen circumstances. Had the asteroid impacted our planet from a slightly altered trajectory, 66 million years in the past, mammals might never have come to dominate it. Likewise, if specific land connections hadn't been present during particular eras, primates might never have made their way to Africa. Had the climate in Africa varied even slightly differently, our forebears could have vanished, joining innumerable other species in extinction. Yet, events unfolded otherwise. Everything aligned perfectly. The landmass fractured precisely when it needed to. Climatic conditions changed favorably. The appropriate groups of beings were situated in the correct locations as the necessary evolutionary pressures arose. Then, gradually, across millions of years, these forces molded a line of primates into something entirely new. Initially, they became bipedal, subsequently grew more intelligent, then began to communicate, strategize, innovate, and ultimately, they became the inheritors of our world. This is the narrative we are about to delve into. It spans from the minuscule, shrew-like beings that endured the asteroid impact to the worldwide civilization you inhabit presently. From the earliest primates ascending trees to the initial humans who left their marks on the lunar surface. This tale speaks of immense stretches of time, of influences so subtle they go unnoticed within a single human lifespan, yet become profound over thousands of years. This narrative is recounted through skeletal remains and rocks, within genetic codes and layers of Earth. It explains the singular reason for our evolution, exclusively on the African continent. And the explanation, I assure you, is far more captivating than you could possibly conceive. Therefore, make yourself at home, relax. Allow your thoughts to wander back through the countless millennia we are about to journey across. For, prior to grasping why humankind originated solely in Africa, we must first comprehend how primates initially reached that continent. To do so, we must return to the absolute genesis, to the moment the dinosaurs perished and mammals took possession of a shattered planet. 66 million years in the past, the world met its demise. A colossal asteroid, measuring 6 miles across, collided with the region we now identify as the Yucatan Peninsula, unleashing power equivalent to 10 billion atomic explosions. That collision turned rock into vapor, sparked planet-wide infernos, and enveloped the globe in shadow for several months. Once the airborne particles eventually cleared, quite literally, 3/4 of all life forms on Earth had disappeared. The era of the dinosaurs had concluded. However, a key aspect of cataclysmic events is that they prepare the ground for new beginnings. Amidst the debris of that ravaged planet, something tiny began to awaken. Envision the terrain merely a few 100,000 years following the collision. The woodlands are gradually, tentatively, making a comeback, and navigating through the dense vegetation, a being no larger than a small rodent is a creature known as Purgatorius. It possessed a lengthy snout, diminutive sharp teeth, and a thick, furry tail. From our perspective, it would appear rather ordinary, perhaps resembling a tree shrew or a tiny rat. Perhaps you wouldn't even give it a second glance. Yet this diminutive survivor, a resourceful explorer navigating the post-cataclysmic woodlands, stands as one of the earliest known primates. It isn't precisely your direct forebear. Consider it, rather, a far-removed relative of your ancestral line, marking the very genesis of our evolutionary journey. The saga of primates truly commences at this point. Amidst the lingering threat of extinction, these beings were so minuscule they could comfortably rest in your palm. To put it into perspective, a staggering 66 million years lies between us and Purgatorius. This duration surpasses the entirety of documented human civilization by over 300-fold. Nevertheless, an unbroken connection persists. Such is the immense, almost overwhelming time frame we are now exploring. These primordial primates, Purgatorius and its relatives, hadn't yet fully resembled their contemporary descendants. They were, in essence, proto-primates, occasionally referred to as plesiodapiforms. Their digits bore claws, not the flat nails we associate with primates today. Their vision was oriented laterally, much like the majority of mammals. In numerous aspects, they were still in the process of defining the very essence of primatedom. However, they possessed a singular, vital benefit: an inherent suitability for arboreal existence. Within a world slowly mending from widespread destruction, The towering trees offered the path forward. Let us now advance the timeline by 10 million years. We now find ourselves 55 million years in the past. Our planet had undergone a significant warming trend. This era is known as the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, a phase characterized by profound planetary warming. Verdant tropical forests extended across vast swaths of the Earth, even stretching into the Arctic regions. Within these vibrant, leafy overhead environments, the first true primates began to appear. These beings, ancestral to lineages such as the adapiforms and hominids, exhibited novel characteristics. They featured forward-directed eyes, prehensile hands, equipped with opposable thumbs, flat nails replacing sharp claws, and brains proportionally larger for their body mass. These were not arbitrary transformations. Instead, they represented specific adaptations tailored for navigating a three-dimensional environment. For those dwelling among the branches, the ability to gauge distance accurately was paramount for survival. When the necessity arose to firmly grasp branches, hands proved superior to claws, and in the intricate task of traversing complex surroundings, enhanced intelligence yielded significant advantages. Picture them: diminutive, nimble, executing precise leaps between tree limbs. Their gaze fixed ahead, assessing gaps, their hands deftly encircling bark and ripe fruit. These very characteristics would ultimately pave the way for the emergence of monkeys, apes, and indeed, ourselves. Yet, a span of 45 million years still separated us from anything remotely human-like. Hold on. This is precisely the juncture where our narrative embarks on an unforeseen deviation. It's a revelation that often astonishes individuals upon their initial encounter. One might naturally presume, considering humanity's evolution in Africa, that our primate forebears were perpetually rooted on that continent, that the complete evolutionary saga transpired solely on a single landmass, a tidy, straightforward advancement from archaic primate to contemporary human. However, the process of evolution rarely follows such a direct path. The journey of evolution is rarely a neat one. It's characterized by countless diversions, evolutionary dead ends, and extensive migrations spanning entire continents. Roughly 40 million years ago, the higher primates, which we refer to as anthropoids, the very group that includes monkeys, apes, and humans, first appeared not in Africa, but surprisingly, in Asia. Allow that thought to settle for a moment. The ancestral line that would eventually give rise to you didn't commence in the widely recognized cradle of humankind, but rather deep within the ancient forests of regions now identified as Myanmar, Thailand, or China. Indeed, fossilized proof of early anthropoids emerges within Asian rock layers well before any similar findings elsewhere. These were diminutive, monkey-like beings, yet they exhibited more sophisticated traits compared to earlier primates. Their skulls displayed fused frontal bones, their eye sockets were fully enclosed, and they possessed more intricate dental arrangements. Their dentition was suited for processing a wide array of diets. So, the natural question arises: what occurred? How did our ancient ancestors manage to traverse from Asia to Africa? The solution is found within the realm of geology and the unhurried ballet of continents. Roughly 40 to 35 million years ago, during the Eocene and transitioning into the Oligocene epochs, the Earth's landmasses were positioned quite differently than they are today. The Tethys Sea, an expansive ancient ocean that once served as a barrier between Africa and Eurasia, steadily receded as tectonic plates continued their slow, powerful movements. At specific periods, land bridges materialized, transient connections, narrow ecological corridors, which these anthropoids then traversed. We lack precise knowledge regarding the exact timing or the number of instances these migrations occurred. The fossil records from this specific period are, regrettably, quite sparse. It's important to remember we're discussing small-bodied creatures living in tropical environments, where the process of fossilization is inherently infrequent. Yet, by roughly 38 to 35 million years ago, anthropoids distinctly emerge within the African fossil record. They had successfully undertaken the journey. They had established a new home on an unfamiliar continent. And here lies the truly intriguing element of this narrative. Intriguingly, the Asian lineages from which these African immigrants originated ultimately died out. Every single higher primate lineage in Asia from that era eventually disappeared entirely. The fossil record vividly chronicles their gradual decline and ultimate disappearance over countless millennia. Meanwhile, on the African continent, these immigrant populations prospered and underwent extensive diversification. Today, every Old World monkey and ape, including humanity itself, traces its ancestry back to those African populations, not to the original Asian groups. This begs the question, why did Asian primates decline while African ones prospered? The answer, with near certainty, points to the climate. The Earth, at that time, was experiencing a significant cooling. Global temperatures, which had peaked dramatically during the Eocene, embarked on a lengthy, inconsistent downward trend. This climatic shift impacted various regions in distinct ways. Eurasia, especially in its higher latitudes, became progressively more seasonal. Winters, in particular, grew noticeably colder. Forest environments grew less stable. Resources, consequently, experienced dramatic fluctuations in availability with the progression of the seasons. For primates accustomed to stable tropical environments, this unfolding situation was nothing short of a slow-motion catastrophe. Africa, positioned directly across the equator, managed to retain a relative stability. It wasn't entirely static, as no environment ever truly is, but it was largely protected from the harshest extremes. The tropical climate, crucially, persisted. Forests managed to endure, even as their geographical spread and species makeup underwent transformations. For primates, this region evolved into a true refuge, a sanctuary where evolutionary exploration could persist without the brutal impact of seasonal extremes eradicating entire populations. Yet, Africa's appeal wasn't solely about maintaining warmth. The continent provided something more profound. Let's journey back in time, imagining the African continent as it was 30 to 20 million years ago. This was a land boasting an incredible array of environments. Think of the thick rainforests blanketing the Congo Basin, the sprawling woodlands to the east, nascent grasslands appearing in certain areas, alongside majestic mountains, winding river valleys, and serene coastal stretches. Such a rich tapestry of habitats allowed primates to truly specialize, to master various ecological niches, and to explore diverse approaches to survival. Crucially, when their surroundings inevitably shifted as nature dictates, there were always alternative havens, other types of environments readily available for refuge. Within this vibrant melting pot of life, African anthropoids began to flourish and diversify. They gradually branched out, forming numerous distinct evolutionary lines. One of these branches was destined to evolve into the Old World monkeys, encompassing familiar species such as baboons and macaques, as well as the graceful colobus monkeys. Meanwhile, another significant lineage, emerging approximately 25 to 20 million years ago, was on its path to becoming. The apes, indeed, our very own family. The earliest known apes, such as proconsul, make their debut in the African fossil record dating back about 23 million years. It's important to note that these creatures were not yet the knuckle-walking gorillas or the swinging gibbons we know today. Not at that stage. Instead, they possessed a more generalized form. Moving on all fours, and notably lacking tails, a key feature setting them apart from monkeys, they were also generally larger and exhibited greater adaptability in both their movement and their daily habits. These early apes made their homes within the lush forests of East Africa, gracefully navigating both the treetops and the forest floor, sustaining themselves on a diet of fruits and leaves. They were, in essence, exploring various modes of existence. For countless millions of years, apes continued to diversify and spread throughout Africa, eventually making their way back into Eurasia. Roughly 15 million years ago, various ape species had successfully dispersed across the entirety of the Old World. Certain lineages, such as Sivapithecus found in Asia, would ultimately evolve into the ancestors of modern orangutans. However, many others faced extinction, leaving no surviving progeny. Yet, the primary hub of ape, evolution, the very wellspring of their innovation, steadfastly stayed within Africa. The question arises, why? Once more, our attention turns to the interplay of climate and geological forces. Approximately 15 million years ago, the global climate continued its trend of cooling. The vast Antarctic ice sheet grew larger, ocean currents underwent significant changes, and, of paramount importance to our narrative, Eurasia grew progressively inhospitable to tropical primates. Evergreen forests gave way to seasonal ones, while open woodlands and grasslands spread widely. Consequently, for apes accustomed to warm, consistent forests, Europe and a significant portion of Asia turned into an unsuitable habitat. Numerous lineages vanished, though a handful, such as orangutans, managed to persist in Southeast Asian refugia, but overall diversity plummeted. Concurrently, Africa was experiencing its own profound changes, and these shifts would lay the groundwork for something truly remarkable. The East African Rift System started to take shape approximately 25 million years ago, yet its impact became much more pronounced between 10 and 7 million years ago. This area stands as one of our planet's most geologically dynamic zones, a locale where the Earth's continental crust is quite literally being pulled asunder. With the rift's expansion came the formation of mountains, valleys, volcanoes, and lakes. It also significantly altered weather patterns, leading to the creation of rain shadows, where one flank of a mountain range enjoyed plentiful rainfall, while the opposite side became arid. What implications did this hold for evolution? It fostered the emergence of microclimates, resulting in neighboring areas possessing vastly distinct environmental conditions. This implied that populations of a single species might become isolated within separate valleys, facing unique selective pressures, and thus evolving along divergent paths. The rift system transformed into an evolutionary crucible, serving as a natural experiment in biological diversification. This development occurred concurrently with another pivotal alteration, the fragmentation of forests. From 10 to 7 million years ago, as the Earth's climate persisted in its cooling trajectory and Africa's landscape underwent changes, the continent's unbroken forest expanse started to disintegrate. This transformation wasn't instantaneous. Rather, it unfolded gradually, in a fragmented and uneven manner. Yet, across hundreds of millennia, the continuous forest canopy yielded to a diverse mosaic. Pockets of thick forest, expanses of woodland, vast open grasslands, and winding riverine corridors of trees threading through the savanna. This varied environment holds immense importance. It is utterly crucial, and allow me to explain its significance. Within an unbroken forest, a single optimal approach prevails. Excel at arboreal life climbing, adeptly, swinging with efficiency, and consuming leaves and fruit. A highly skilled tree dweller would undoubtedly thrive. However, in a mosaic landscape, the established rules no longer apply. Occasionally, one must traverse open terrain to access the subsequent cluster of trees. At times, the most nutritious food sources are found on the ground, rather than high in the canopy. Other instances demand the ability to detect predators across expansive grasslands. There are moments when carrying items, be it food, offspring, or implements over distances, becomes necessary, precluding the use of hands for movement. Such a diverse environment favors adaptability. It encourages innovation. It benefits organisms capable of performing various tasks competently rather than excelling at just one. This was precisely the setting in which apes in East Africa existed between 10 and 7 million years ago. They weren't abruptly thrust into it, but rather, over successive generations, they inhabited terrains where trees persisted, yet were no longer ubiquitous, where traversing the ground occasionally offered the quickest path, and where adaptability in behavior became essential for survival. By the 7 million year mark, all the elements were in place. Africa had evolved into an unparalleled location on Earth, situated at the equator for climatic consistency and geologically dynamic, thereby generating a multitude of microclimates. Its intricate environment, featuring forest grassland mosaics, harbored populations of large-bodied apes who were already intelligent, social, and adaptable. This particular confluence of factors was unmatched on any other continent. Europe and Asia, being excessively seasonal and severe, saw their ape populations diminish towards extinction. South America, conversely, possessed monkeys, yet lacked apes. These two primate groups had diverged much earlier, and the evolutionary trajectory of South America proceeded along distinct lines. No primates existed in Australia whatsoever. Their presence was confined solely to Africa, precisely in this era and location. Subsequently, an astonishing development unfolded. A breakthrough so momentous, so transformative, it was destined to reshape the entire course of life across our planet. It was an adaptation that appeared unassuming, almost inconsequential, until one grasped its profound ramifications. Our forebears began to stand upright. However, the reasons behind their upright stance, and its monumental impact on all subsequent developments, constitute a narrative worthy of dedicated exploration. For bipedalism, the act of walking on two legs, transcended mere alternative locomotion. Instead, it heralded the dawn of our journey toward humanity. And this pivotal event transpired solely within this precise era, in this particular locale, shaped by these distinct environmental forces. The foundational elements were already firmly established, built upon 66 million years of primate evolutionary history. This included the perseverance of diminutive beings amidst a world reshaped by catastrophe, alongside the emergence of dexterous hands and forward-oriented vision. Further contributing factors were the journey from Asia into Africa and the eventual disappearance of competing evolutionary pathways. The equatorial zone offered a sanctuary, while the Rift Valley functioned as a natural crucible for development. The intricate tapestry of an ever-shifting landscape, every single one of these elements was drawing together. Each component proved indispensable, and collectively, they were all guiding us towards the subsequent stage. Chapter in our unfolding narrative, the segment where apes transcended their original form to become something greater. Envision this moment. Approximately 7 million years in the past, deep within the verdant woodlands of Central Africa, a particular being traverses the tree canopy. Its appearance is distinctly ape-like, bearing the characteristic features of an ape's countenance. Yet, as it descends from the arboreal branches and makes its way across an open glade to arrive at the subsequent cluster of trees, an astonishing transformation takes place. It rises to an upright position, not with absolute perfection, not in the precise manner you might be standing or reclining at this very moment, but sufficiently erect, adequately perpendicular, and distinct enough that, were you able to journey back through time and witness this very instant, you would discern something truly profound. This, indeed, represents the earliest intimation of humanity. Here, our genuine genesis commences. The organism I am recounting could have. We're talking about Sahelanthropus chadensis. Our knowledge of this species comes from one incredibly valuable skull, unearthed in Chad back in 2001. This discovery was so momentous that the research team affectionately named it Tumi, a word that translates to hope of life in the indigenous Goro tongue. This ancient skull is estimated to be around 7 million years old, placing it precisely when our evolutionary line diverged from the ancestors of chimpanzees. But what truly sets Tumi apart, making it so extraordinary, is the specific placement of its foramen magnum. Bear with me for a moment. This detail is crucial. The foramen magnum refers to the opening at the bottom of your skull, where your spinal cord joins with your brain. For quadrupedal creatures, those animals that move about on all fours, this particular opening is situated towards the rear of the skull. However, in bipedal beings, it's positioned directly below, resting perfectly balanced on the spine, much like a bowling ball perched on a stick. Intriguingly, Tumi's foramen magnum is located underneath, a feature that strongly suggests it possessed the ability to walk in an upright posture. So, this implies that as far back as 7 million years ago, within the lush forests and woodlands of what we now call the Sahara Desert, and yes, it truly was green back then, some creature was already trying its hand at standing tall. The revolution had indeed commenced, though it would require countless millennia to fully refine. However, Sahelanthropus wasn't the sole participant in this evolutionary trial. Roughly 6 million years ago, amidst the verdant highlands of Kenya, a different being was also progressing towards bipedal locomotion. We refer to this species as Orrorin tuganensis, and our understanding of it comes from mere fragments. We have small sections of thigh bone, portions of arm, and scattered teeth. But it's those thigh bone pieces that truly reveal a narrative. The femur, or your thigh bone, stands as an exceptionally revealing skeletal element. The specific angle where it joins your hip, the density of its cortical layer, and the dimensions and form of its joint surfaces, each of these characteristics provides insight into an animal's locomotion. And Orrorin's femur exhibits unmistakable adaptations for bipedal locomotion. Its angle is precisely correct, its structure perfectly suited. This ancient being traversed the forests of the Tugan Hills in an upright manner, possibly ascending trees for refuge and sustenance, yet growing progressively more at ease on two limbs. But why? What exactly was propelling this profound transformation? Keep that query in mind, as we'll revisit it shortly. First, however, we must introduce you to one of the most captivating beings ever unearthed. Her name is Ardi. During 1994, within Ethiopia's Afar region, that very same area destined to reveal numerous hominin riches, paleontologists unearthed something truly remarkable. An almost entire skeleton belonging to a hominin that existed 4.4 million years prior. This species received the designation Ardipithecus ramidus, and the particular individual specimen came to be known as Ardi. A full 15 years were required to completely excavate, meticulously prepare, and thoroughly analyze Ardi's skeletal remains. This involved a decade and a half of arduous effort, painstakingly reassembling 125 pieces of a skeleton that had been both crushed and dispersed across countless millennia. And once the comprehensive analysis was eventually released in 2009, it fundamentally transformed our comprehension of early human evolution. This was because Ardi presented a mosaic of features. Her feet were capable of grasping like an ape's, complete with a divergent big toe ideally suited for clutching branches, yet she also possessed a pelvis, specifically structured for upright locomotion. Her long arms were suited for climbing, yet her legs were capable of supporting an upright gait. She embodied a blend of arboreal and terrestrial life, a being gracefully navigating both realms, rather than being merely caught between them. Ardi was not merely a chimpanzee who had learned to walk on two legs. Instead, she represented a distinct evolutionary path, uniquely tailored to her particular surroundings. Her habitat was a forest undergoing fragmentation, where trees continued to offer sustenance and refuge, but where the skill of traversing open terrain with ease was growing in importance. She stands as a symbol of this pivotal transitional period, a true evolutionary threshold. Journeying further through the annals of time, we encounter what is arguably the most renowned fossil human ever unearthed. Lucy. It was on the 24th of November, 1974, that paleoanthropologist Donald Johanson, while exploring a gully in Ethiopia's Afar region, noticed a small bone fragment, an arm bone, specifically, protruding from the ancient sediment. This sighting led to one of the most profound revelations in the study of human ancestry, a skeleton, approximately 40% intact, of a diminutive female who passed away 3.2 million years ago. That evening, the research team was listening to the Beatles, with Lucy in the Sky, with diamonds playing repeatedly. The name, naturally, became permanent. Lucy, or Australopithecus afarensis, was unequivocally and clearly bipedal. Her pelvis, short and wide, was ideally structured for an upright gait. Her leg bones converged inward, enabling her to walk with her feet positioned directly beneath her center of gravity, thus avoiding a side-to-side waddle. Her foot had evolved, losing the opposable big toe. Instead, it was aligned with the other digits, creating a firm lever that propelled her forward with every stride. while she retained long arms, suggesting she likely still ascended trees, perhaps for nocturnal safety. Her fundamental design was undeniably optimized for walking. She was a bipedal creature, and she was far from unique. Lucy was part of a species that flourished throughout East Africa for almost 1 million years. Discoveries of Australopithecus afarensis fossils across numerous locations, representing scores of individuals, unveil a highly successful and adaptable species fully dedicated to a life on 2 legs. However, the most profoundly moving evidence of ancient bipedalism doesn't emerge from skeletal remains. Instead, it is revealed through footprints. In 1976, at a site known as Laetoli in Tanzania, the paleontologist Mary Leakey unearthed something that, even now, leaves me breathless upon reflection. A series of footprints, remarkably preserved within volcanic ash, made by 3 individuals traversing the ancient landscape 3.6 million years ago. Take a moment to truly ponder this. Picture the unfolding drama. A distant volcano erupts with force. Ash descends, blanketing the savanna like a soft snowfall. The ground is moist from a recent downpour. The ash possesses the texture of freshly mixed concrete. 3 beings, perhaps a family unit or simply companions on a journey, proceed across this ash-laden terrain. Their feet leave distinct impressions. Subsequently, more rain gently falls, precisely enough to solidify the ash without obliterating these precious marks. Following this, another layer of ash descends, sealing the prints. Then, the immense span of 3.6 million years passes, preserving this singular moment until Mary Leakey, with careful hands, clears away the overlying sediment and brings them back into view. These footprints possess an uncanny, almost hauntingly human quality. The heel makes initial contact, followed by the weight gracefully shifting across the ball of the foot. Finally, the toes push off the ground. It is, in essence, precisely how you, too, walk today. The foot's arch is clearly visible. The prominent big toe is perfectly aligned. These are the impressions left by bipeds, creatures whose physical forms and manner of movement would feel familiar to us, even though their faces and minds would still appear ape-like. There's a profound sense of emotion emanating from these ancient marks. They are not fossils in the conventional sense, not bones turned to stone, nor artifacts shaped by human hands. Instead, they are accidental imprints of past actions, offering a rare glimpse into a fleeting instant of primeval existence. Imagine 3 beings traversing an ash-dusted plain in unison. What destination beckoned them? What thoughts occupied their minds? If thinking is even the appropriate term for their mental state, were they gripped by terror as the volcano began its eruption? Was their journey an escape, or merely a routine passage through their familiar territory? We may never uncover the full truth, yet one fact remains undeniable. They moved on 2 feet. This naturally leads us to the inquiry that has been subtly developing throughout this segment. What compelled our forebears to adopt an upright stance? Which evolutionary force or benefit spurred this profound alteration in their physical structure and mode of movement? Now, consider this. No solitary explanation exists. Evolution seldom operates via isolated, straightforward pressures. It's not a tale where an ape simply decided to stand one morning, recognized its benefit, and then bequeathed that characteristic to its progeny. The reality is far more intricate, multifaceted, and indeed, captivating. Bipedalism probably arose from a convergence of numerous elements, each offering a distinct selective benefit, with each factor strengthening the others across vast stretches of geological time. Our exploration begins with the concept of energy efficiency. This might, at first glance, appear illogical. Moving and standing on just 2 limbs can appear unstable when contrasted with the firm, 4-point contact of a quadruped. Yet, biomechanical research has unveiled a remarkable truth. For extended journeys, walking upright demands considerably less energy than knuckle walking. Unlike the ground movement of chimpanzees and gorillas, your elongated legs and efficient stride, coupled with a well-placed center of gravity, mean that each step necessitates only minimal muscular exertion to sustain forward motion. A chimpanzee, conversely, must bear a substantial portion of its body weight on its arms with every movement, thereby activating more muscles and expending a greater number of calories. In a landscape where food sources grew increasingly scattered, necessitating longer treks between fruit-bearing trees or foraging locations, this efficiency proved crucial. It allowed for greater distances to be covered using an identical amount of energy. This enabled an expansion of territory. It also facilitated survival in environments where sustenance was more widely distributed. Next, let's consider thermoregulation, the body's ability to manage heat. If you're not already standing, gently imagine rising to your feet now, perhaps as you slowly drift into slumber. Observe how little of your physical form is directly subjected to the sun's rays, merely your head and the tops of your shoulders. Now, picture yourself on all fours. Instantly, your entire back transforms into a broad solar collector, soaking up warmth. Within the progressively open landscapes of East Africa, as dense forests gave way to scattered woodlands and vast savannas, the regulation of body temperature grew paramount. An erect stance significantly reduces the skin's area directly exposed to the intense overhead sun. This posture also lifts your body into higher air currents, facilitating more effective convective cooling. Furthermore, when standing, a greater surface area of your skin is exposed for evaporative cooling through perspiration, a skill we possess with remarkable efficiency compared to our primate relatives. In essence, bipedalism served as a crucial thermal adaptation. This enabled our early ancestors to stay active throughout the scorching heat of the day, a time when most other creatures were compelled to seek refuge in the shade. This granted them entry into unique temporal niches, periods of the day that their rivals were unable to utilize, yet perhaps the most compelling. An instinctively persuasive explanation emerges from the carrying hypothesis. Imagine freeing your hands. At its core, this is the profound impact of bipedalism. It unchains your upper limbs from the demands of movement. With your hands now unburdened, a world of possibilities opens for carrying. Provisions, implements, even your young. Within a fragmented environment, where vital resources were dispersed and uncertain, the capacity to transport food from its discovery point to a more secure spot, or to share it with offspring and partners, gained immense importance. Moreover, the skill of carrying tools, even rudimentary ones, significantly enhanced their foraging effectiveness. The capacity to carry an infant implies that the young no longer needed to cling to their parents' fur, nor possess the strength to hold on during extensive journeys. This, in turn, allowed for infants to be born at an earlier, less developed stage. Consequently, it facilitated the evolution of larger brains in relation to the dimensions of the birth canal. Observe how these elements interlink and create a cascading effect. Each adaptation paves the way for the next, in a continuous chain. Beyond that, a social dimension also comes into play. Standing erect naturally makes you appear taller. This elevated perspective allows you to survey greater distances across the tall grasses of the savanna. Consequently, you can detect potential predators much sooner. You gain the advantage of scanning the terrain for vital resources. Furthermore, you can present yourself more prominently to rivals or prospective partners. Stature commands respect. Stature can also instill apprehension. An imposing height often conveyed a message of robust fitness. Within the intricate social structures of early hominins, the capacity to stand tall likely conferred considerable benefits in the realms of mate selection and the struggle for social standing. Therefore, which of these explanations holds true? The answer is all of them. And yet, none of them individually. This brings us to the mosaic environment theory. Bipedalism did not emerge due to a singular cause, but rather as an adaptive response to an intricate, shifting environment that greatly favored adaptability. Africa's once dense forests were gradually fragmenting, a consequence of cooling and aridifying climatic shifts. The unbroken canopy began to fracture into distinct patches, woodlands in some areas, expansive grasslands in others, and riparian forests tracing the watercourses. To thrive within this varied landscape, our ancestors absolutely required flexibility. While the skill of climbing trees retained its value, so too did the efficiency of ground-based locomotion. The capacity to utilize both arboreal and terrestrial resources, to traverse between these disparate patches, and to adapt to constant variability, this was the profound offering of bipedalism. It represented a strategic wager on adaptability amidst uncertainty, and it proved to be a winning one. Yet, a pivotal question arises. Why exclusively in Africa? If bipedalism presented such a multitude of benefits, why did apes in Asia or Europe not develop an identical solution? The key lies in that particular confluence of elements we consistently revisit. Africa's distinct environmental backdrop. While other continents certainly possessed forests. While other continents certainly hosted apes, none possessed the unique East African rift system with its distinct microclimates and dynamic geological activity. They also lacked that specific pattern of forest fragmentation, a pace neither too rapid nor too sluggish, which enabled populations to successfully adapt instead of merely vanishing. Furthermore, they lacked the consistent equatorial sanctuary that permitted populations to endure through shifting climates, yet still provided sufficient evolutionary impetus. Meanwhile, regions like Europe and Asia were grappling with far more extreme climatic shifts. Forests in those areas alternately grew and receded. Consequently, ape communities either withdrew alongside the shrinking woodlands, evolved distinct adaptations for a completely ground-dwelling existence, or simply died out. What they didn't possess was the extended evolutionary platform that Africa uniquely offered. It was this blend of environmental demands and safe havens, of adversity and constancy, that nurtured the slow development of bipedalism. Africa, in essence, served as the ideal crucible for this transformation. And the Australopithecines, this varied collection of upright walking apes that thrived approximately 4 to 2 million years ago, truly demonstrated its viability. While Lucy's species, Australopithecus afarensis, remains the most renowned, it was certainly not the only one. Among them were Australopithecus anamensis, an older species found in Kenya and Ethiopia, Australopithecus africanus from South Africa, characterized by its somewhat more slender physique, Australopithecus garhi, potentially the earliest toolmaker, and, subsequently, more heavily built forms, such as Paranthropus, distinguished by their enormous jaws and teeth, perfectly suited for grinding fibrous plant matter. All these species were, in essence, exploring variations on a fundamental physical design, walking upright, possessing comparatively small brains, and exhibiting ape-like facial features. They inhabited distinct ecological roles, consumed diverse diets, and employed subtly varied approaches to survival. Some flourished in forested areas, while others prospered in more expansive, open landscapes. A few were adaptable generalists, others highly specialized. This represented an extraordinary evolutionary diversification, all of it, constructed upon the bedrock of bipedal locomotion. However, and this point is crucial, these beings were not yet human in any way we would intellectually comprehend. Their cranial capacity remained modest, approximately 400 to 500 cubic centimeters, comparable to that of a chimpanzee and less than a third of your own. They were undoubtedly intelligent, and they lived in social groups. While they exhibited intricate behaviors, they weren't crafting sophisticated tools. They weren't employing spoken language. They weren't producing artistic works, interring their deceased, or gazing at the cosmos with philosophical thought. Ultimately, they were bipedal apes, successful, highly adaptable bipedal apes, yet apes nonetheless. Nevertheless, a new chapter was quietly unfolding. By approximately 3.3 million years ago, an unknown species, whose identity remains uncertain, had begun fashioning stone tools. These were rudimentary implements, merely stones intentionally chipped to produce a keen edge, but tools they certainly were. The most ancient stone tools discovered originate from a Kenyan site named Lomekwi, predating any recognized member of the genus Homo. It was an Australopithecine who crafted those tools. A creature, ape-like, yet walking erect, observed a stone and perceived its inherent possibilities, its practical use. It then selected another rock, and struck it with precise aim to generate a sharp, cutting surface. That singular instant, that profound cognitive breakthrough, planted the seed for all subsequent developments. Walking on two legs liberated the hands. Unencumbered hands, in turn, facilitated the use of tools. This tool use exerted selective pressure, favoring enhanced hand-eye coordination, strategic planning, and spatial awareness, which then spurred the development of larger brains. Larger brains, consequently, allowed for the creation of more intricate tools, which further intensified this cycle. It's a self-reinforcing loop, a cascading effect, an unstoppable evolutionary mechanism. Bipedalism served as the bedrock, the essential stage, the fundamental requirement for every characteristic that defines our humanity. Yet, the true revolution, the dramatic increase in brain volume, the birth of language, the eventual dominion over the planet, all of that was still on the horizon. That, however, is the subsequent installment of our narrative. For this moment, as you drift further into peaceful slumber, visualize those ancient footprints at Laetoli. Imagine three figures striding erect across the ash-dusted savanna. Their particular journey had reached its conclusion, but the grand saga of humanity was only just commencing. They rose to their feet, and by doing so, initiated a profound metamorphosis that would ultimately culminate in your existence. In bustling cities and soaring symphonies, in cultivated fields and voyages to the stars, in the power of language and the depth of love, and indeed, in all that defines us as human. But before any of that, they simply had to stand. Indeed, this unfolded in Africa, exclusively on the African continent. For Africa alone possessed the exact confluence of factors: the dynamic geology, the climatic forces, the diverse environmental tapestry, and the secure sanctuary needed to foster this unlikely endeavor, the very experiment that ultimately shaped our existence. Chapter 3: The Emergence of Homo: Intellect, Implements, and Explorers. From 2 million to 300,000 years before our time. While bipedalism marked the initial major shift, and walking on two legs was indeed revolutionary, it wasn't what truly defined us as human. Not at that point. The Australopithecines, including Lucy and her kin, possessed relatively small brains, and their mental capabilities remained quite restricted. They were capable of traversing the African terrain, certainly. They could transport sustenance, identify threats, and endure within the varied environment of woodlands and savannas. Yet, they were not quite us. Between 2.8 and 2.3 million years ago, a significant change occurred. Then, a distinct lineage appeared, a novel type of hominin, characterized by a perceptibly larger brain, more agile hands, and an interaction with their surroundings that transcended simple existence. This marked the genesis of the genus Homo, our own genus, the ancestral line destined to give rise to you, to me, and to every individual throughout history. Introducing Homo habilis, often called the handy man. Doesn't that name sound rather charmingly old-fashioned? Nevertheless, it encapsulates a crucial truth. This was more than simply another Australopithecine exhibiting a marginally altered cranial form. The brain of Homo habilis typically measured about 600 cubic centimeters, a size considerably greater than Lucy's 400. While this difference might seem minor, from an evolutionary perspective, it represented a monumental advance. This additional neural tissue facilitated enhanced planning, improved problem-solving abilities, and a greater capacity to conceptualize what had not yet materialized, and indeed, they put it to good use. The Oldowan stone implements, named for Tanzania's Olduvai Gorge where their initial discovery took place, signify a pivotal cognitive achievement. These were not merely fortuitously sharp stones. Instead, they were purposefully fashioned tools, created by striking one rock against another at specific angles to produce keen-edged flakes. Every single implement demanded careful consideration, choosing the appropriate stone, comprehending its fracture patterns, and delivering the blow with measured strength. Instruction was also necessary. One individual needed to demonstrate the process to another. Information and skills needed to be transmitted across generations. This, in essence, is culture. Perhaps it was basic, yet it was undeniably culture. Homo habilis continued to spend a portion of their lives among the trees. Their elongated arms and curved fingers were clear adaptations for arboreal movement. They inhabited an environment that remained in flux, suspended between the security of the treetops and the prospects offered by the ground. However, the evolutionary path was unmistakable. Brain size was increasing, manual dexterity was improving. The connection with tools was becoming more profound. Subsequently, Homo erectus emerged. Imagine this scene. 1.9 million years ago, on the western bank of Kenya's lake, Turkana, a young male child passes away. He was likely around 8 or 9 years of age, though his skeletal remains indicate he would have reached almost 6 feet in height. His body was interred in sediment, and across countless millennia, his bones gradually turned to fossils. Now, let's advance to 1984. The paleontologist Kamoya Kimio observes a small cranial fragment emerging from an eroding slope. The subsequent archaeological dig reveals an astonishing discovery: the most intact early hominin skeleton ever unearthed, known as the Turkana Boy. This skeleton reveals a narrative beyond mere words. Observe its proportions. They are remarkably modern: elongated legs, shorter arms, and slender hips. This wasn't an organism still undecided between arboreal and ground-dwelling. Homo erectus had entirely embraced a life on land. They were adept at walking, running, and journeying great distances. Their physique was designed for stamina, enabling them to traverse immense landscapes beneath the African sun. Their brains, approximately 900 cubic centimeters, were 50% larger than those of habilis. The Turkana Boy's skull exhibits every characteristic that would evolve into the human shape: a less protruding face, more diminutive teeth, and a more subtle brow ridge. The evolutionary gap separating habilis from erectus is remarkable, considerably more profound than the distinctions between erectus and ourselves. Homo erectus signifies a true breakthrough. Ponder the requirements of a more substantial brain. Neural tissue consumes a great deal of metabolic energy. Currently, your brain utilizes roughly 20% of your body's energy, even though it constitutes just 2% of your body mass. For erectus, whose brains were expanding, this presented a significant dilemma. How does one sustain a larger brain while still gathering food in an uncertain habitat? The solution, which transformed everything, was fire and the act of cooking. As far back as 1.5 million years ago, we find indications of managed fire. This wasn't merely taking advantage of natural blazes, but rather intentional starting and tending. Evidence includes ancient hearths, scorched bones, and carbonized plant fragments. Archaeological locations like Kubiora in Kenya and Swartkrans in South Africa hold these primeval fires, preserved as if suspended in time. Attempt to envision the profound importance of this juncture. Fire provided comfort and heat during chilly evenings. It offered defense against dangerous animals. No predatory lion would willingly venture near a roaring fire. It provided illumination once the sun had set, prolonging daylight hours and fostering opportunities for communal activity following the hunt. Yet, most importantly, fire enabled cooking. Food prepared with heat is essentially pre-digested. The warmth softens resilient fibers, alters protein structures, and eliminates harmful parasites. Your system absorbs significantly more caloric energy from cooked meats and root vegetables compared to their raw counterparts. You expend less effort on mastication and digestion. These conserved calories, in turn, could power a more substantial brain. Thus, cognitive development entered a self-reinforcing cycle, where each aspect facilitated the growth of the other. The advent of fire also revolutionized communal living. A central hearth served as a focal point for assembly. Picture those early communities gathered in a ring, with the encroaching darkness surrounding them. Flickering flames cast light upon their faces. Narratives could be recounted, wisdom exchanged, and connections fortified. Fire established a core, a secure home, a haven for fellowship. And armed with enhanced intellects, superior implements, and control over fire, Homo erectus accomplished something unprecedented for any hominin. They departed from Africa, approximately 1.8 million years ago, small bands of Homo erectus migrated away from their continent of origin. Their journey took them northward, across the Sinai Peninsula, and into the Levant, eventually extending eastward into the region of Georgia. This pivotal period is vividly illustrated by the Dmanisi fossils, which are approximately 1.8 million years old. As some of the most intact early Homo remains discovered beyond Africa, their remarkably primitive features indicate that this migration occurred quite early, while Homo erectus was still undergoing evolutionary changes. Following their time in Georgia, their travels extended into Central Asia and then southward into Southeast Asia, the very place where Java man was unearthed in the 1890s. They also ventured across to China, with Peking man inhabiting caves close to Beijing. By roughly 1.5 million years ago, Homo erectus had successfully populated a significant portion of the Old World. What enabled them to depart when their hominin predecessors could not? The explanation can be found within all the points we've just covered. Their increased brain size facilitated superior planning abilities, enhanced problem-solving skills, and a greater capacity for adapting to novel surroundings. Sophisticated tools, such as hand axes and cleavers, allowed them to prepare a broader range of foodstuffs and to hunt with increased efficiency. Furthermore, fire offered essential warmth in colder regions. They gained protection against unknown predators and acquired the skill to cook unfamiliar plants, rendering them edible. Cooperative hunting strategies enabled small groups to successfully fell large game, thereby securing the vital caloric energy required to fuel their demanding brains. Homo erectus wasn't merely existing, they were flourishing. Throughout Eurasia, their presence persisted for more than 1 million years. Consider that for a moment. That's a span exceeding 1 million years. In contrast, modern Homo sapiens has only been around for approximately 300,000 years. Homo erectus survived for 3 times longer than our species has so far. They successfully adjusted to diverse environments, from the tropical rainforests of Java and the temperate woodlands of China to the seasonal grasslands found in the Levant. These populations developed into distinct regional forms, such as Java man and Peking man. While each was molded by its particular surroundings, they all remained integral members of the erectus lineage. However, an intriguing development occurred. Even as erectus expanded throughout Eurasia, the process of evolution continued unabated in Africa. Within its birthplace, the evolutionary momentum persisted. Approximately 700,000 to 600,000 years ago, a novel hominin, Homo heidelbergensis, emerged within the African fossil evidence. Though named for a jawbone discovered near Heidelberg, Germany, this species most probably originated in Africa. Homo heidelbergensis possessed an even more substantial brain, measuring roughly 1,200 cubic centimeters, alongside more sophisticated tools. Their hand axes grew more symmetrical and were fashioned with greater precision, hinting at an appreciation for aesthetics beyond mere utility. Homo heidelbergensis holds immense significance, as this species, or a very similar form, is believed to be the shared ancestor of 2 of the most renowned hominins in our evolutionary lineage, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Between approximately 600,000 and 400,000 years ago, these lineages started to separate. Groups that journeyed into Europe and Western Asia encountered harsher, colder climates, periods of glaciation, and secluded valleys. Over countless millennia, these populations gradually transformed into Neanderthals, characterized by their robust build and adaptation to cold. Their brains were comparable in size to ours, yet distinct in form. Concurrently, within Africa, other Homo heidelbergensis populations pursued their unique evolutionary path, ultimately leading to the emergence of Homo sapiens. Evidence of this divergence is apparent in our DNA. Genetic research indicates that Neanderthals and Denisovans, another ancient human group found in Asia, diverged from the sapiens lineage sometime between 600,000 and 400,000 years ago. The molecular clock within our genes precisely marks the point in time when our respective ancestors last belonged to a single shared population. However, Africa, during this era, was far from straightforward. It wasn't a solitary population smoothly transitioning into modern humans. Instead, the fossil evidence reveals an astonishing array of diversity. Numerous hominin species shared the continent, some more ancient, others more contemporary, and some representing evolutionary paths that did not culminate in our species. They occupied the same periods and territories, vying for resources and, quite plausibly, interbreeding. This complex scenario is known as the Pan-African model of human origins. For many decades, the dominant theory was the Garden of Eden hypothesis, suggesting that modern humans originated from a single, confined population somewhere in Africa, possibly East or Southern Africa, before dispersing throughout the continent. Nevertheless, contemporary genetic and fossil discoveries now present a far more intricate understanding. Instead of originating from one specific spot, Homo sapiens arose from a web of interconnected communities scattered throughout Africa. These groups weren't cut off from each other. They exchanged genetic material, passed on cultural advancements, and sometimes combined or separated as their surroundings evolved. Africa is an immense continent, 3 times the size of Europe, boasting an astonishing array of environments. From the dense rainforests of the Congo Basin to the sprawling savannas of East Africa, the arid deserts of the north, and its majestic mountains, rivers, and lakes, each distinct area molded its residents in unique ways. However, the exchange of genes among these populations kept them from evolving into entirely separate species. This very diversity proved to be Africa's greatest asset. At this time, our planet was undergoing significant and dramatic shifts in climate. Glacial periods arrived and receded in recurring cycles, each spanning tens of thousands of years. As vast ice sheets grew across the northern hemisphere, Africa's climate underwent profound transformations. Lush rainforests shrank, lakes vanished, deserts spread, and communities found themselves confined to refugia small, livable areas, encircled by unforgiving landscapes before the ice eventually pulled back. Then, rains would return, forests and grasslands would flourish, populations would once again link up, and genes would intermingle. New ideas and advancements would disseminate. This recurring pattern of separation and reunion, unfolding over hundreds of millennia, forged an intense evolutionary crucible. Groups that became isolated were compelled to devise new solutions to endure their specific local environments. Upon reconnecting, the most effective innovations quickly propagated through cultural exchange. This dynamic interplay of population structure and gene flow might just be the crucial insight into why Africa persisted as the birthplace of human evolution. Concurrently, cultural advancements were gaining momentum. Stone tools grew increasingly refined. While the Acheulean hand axes crafted by Homo erectus and Heidelbergensis were remarkable, a groundbreaking new technology appeared around 300,000 years ago: the prepared core method. Rather than merely chipping pieces from a stone, toolmakers started meticulously shaping a core rock so that one flawless flake could be detached. This demanded exceptional spatial intelligence, the capacity to envision the finished item before its creation. It necessitated forethought, planning several stages in advance. This truly represents abstract thought. It's also probable that language was developing during this era. We lack direct proof, as words leave no fossilized traces. However, the intricate nature of tool production, the synchronized effort needed for collaborative hunting, and the social arrangements hinted at by larger group sizes all point towards advanced forms of communication. Perhaps not language in its modern form, but certainly something akin to it: symbolic movements, rudimentary words, and the underlying cognitive framework that would ultimately enable complete linguistic expression. By approximately 400,000 years ago, all the essential elements were converging. Africa had sustained a varied and interconnected web of hominin communities. These groups possessed sizable brains, crafted advanced tools, mastered fire, and developed progressively intricate social organizations. They inhabited a continent that perpetually tested them with environmental changes, compelling both adaptation and ingenuity. Crucially, Africa's sheer scale and rich diversity ensured that even if local populations perished from drought or illness, others endured in different parts of the continent, thereby safeguarding the species and its collective wisdom. This is precisely why Africa endured as the evolutionary melting pot. In contrast, Neanderthals in Europe were confined to smaller, isolated groups, contending with more severe climates and possessing less genetic variation. When ecological catastrophes occurred, They had fewer safe havens and fewer distinct populations to rely upon. Homo erectus in Asia had flourished for more than 1 million years, yet they also resided in smaller, more segregated communities, experiencing reduced gene flow and less exchange of new ideas. Africa's unparalleled genetic and environmental richness fostered adaptability in a manner unmatched by any other region, thus setting the scene. Around 300,000 years ago, somewhere within Africa, perhaps in several locations across the continent, a new hominin lineage emerged. This hominin possessed a high, rounded cranium, a more delicate skeletal structure, a distinct chin, and a brain averaging 1,350 cubic centimeters, a brain capable of abstract reasoning, symbolic communication, and supporting complete linguistic expression. It brought forth technological advancements unlike anything previously witnessed on Earth. Homo sapiens, we had made our appearance. This marks Section 4, Homo sapiens, the African triumph and global journey. Approximately 315,000 years ago, in the region we now know as Morocco, an extraordinary event was unfolding. Within a cave complex named Jebel Irhoud, a community of hominins resided, hunted, and ultimately met their end. Their remains would lie interred for more than 300 millennia. When archaeologists eventually brought them to light in the 1960s, and especially when they were redated with sophisticated methods in 2017, the established timeline of human origins was dramatically pushed back. These weren't merely ancient human ancestors. These were, in fact, us, Homo sapiens. Our ancestors, our very own species, were already treading the lands of North Africa over 300,000 years ago. And it's worth noting, they weren't the only ones to emerge so early. Journeying thousands of miles southeast, beside Ethiopia's Omo River, further fossil discoveries echo a similar narrative. The Omo remains, approximately 195,000 years old, display that familiar anatomical blueprint, a skull featuring a high, rounded brain case and a face that recedes gently beneath the brow. Rather than protruding, this delicate skeletal framework, often termed gracile, meaning slender, refined, and distinctly modern, marks the very genesis of our species. Our origins weren't confined to a single garden or a solitary valley, but rather spanned the vast expanse of Africa, from its Mediterranean shores down to the Ethiopian highlands. This naturally leads us to wonder, what set these early individuals apart from all who preceded them? Let's begin by examining something quite apparent, the very structure of our skeletons. Imagine, if you will, arranging a Homo erectus, a Neanderthal, and a Homo sapiens in a row. You'd notice distinctions that, while subtle, are undeniably present. The sapiens skull, for instance, is high and domed, reminiscent of a cathedral's ceiling, contrasting with the lower, more elongated craniums of earlier human forms. Our forehead ascends almost straight upwards. Then there's the chin, a distinct bony projection at the jaw's base that, despite lacking any clear mechanical function, serves as an unmistakable identifier for us. Our face is drawn inward or retracted, creating that characteristic flat profile we see in every person living today. Our bodies, too, are more lightly built. Our bones are finer, less dense. While Neanderthals possessed broad, barrel-like chests and stout limb bones, perfectly suited for immense power and frigid environments, Homo sapiens developed a more graceful physique. This form was honed not for sheer force, but for stamina, for traversing vast distances across diverse landscapes. Our design was for movement, for walking, for running, for journeying. And then, of course, there's the brain. With an average volume of about 1,500 cubic centimeters, the sapiens' brain isn't significantly bigger than a Neanderthal's. Indeed, some Neanderthals even possessed slightly larger brains. Yet, sheer size isn't the sole determinant. What truly mattered was its intricate organization, the internal wiring, the overall structure, and how its various regions interacted. The high, rounded cranium of Homo sapiens hints at a brain with a distinct configuration, featuring enlarged areas dedicated to abstract thought, strategic planning, and complex social understanding. While the physical hardware might have been comparable, the software, it appears, underwent a profound revolution. But how can we be truly certain? How do we really know, that every one of us traces our lineage back to these African populations? This is where the field of genetics steps in. During the 1980s and 90s, researchers started to map human ancestry, not by studying ancient bones, but by examining our genetic code. Their attention centered on two especially informative segments of our genetic blueprint: mitochondrial DNA, which is inherited solely from our mothers, and Y chromosome DNA, passed down exclusively from our fathers. Through the comparison of genetic variations found in contemporary populations, and by meticulously tracing these patterns backward in time, scientists were able to pinpoint when and where our most recent shared ancestors resided. The findings were truly astonishing. Every living human being can trace their mitochondrial DNA back to a single woman who lived in Africa, approximately 150,000 years ago, affectionately known as mitochondrial Eve. This isn't to say she was the sole woman alive at the time, but rather that her specific mitochondrial lineage is the only one that has persisted through the ages to reach us today. In a parallel discovery, all men can trace their Y chromosomes back to a Y chromosomal Adam, who also lived in Africa roughly 200,000 years ago. It's important to understand that these aren't actual historical figures named Eve and Adam. Instead, they represent statistical ancestral points, the precise junctures where all contemporary human lineages ultimately converge. Their very existence, however, reveals a profound truth. Every single one of us shares deep African roots. And now, the story takes an even more captivating turn. When geneticists meticulously compare the DNA of today's diverse populations, they uncover something truly remarkable. African populations, especially groups such as the San people in southern Africa or the Hadza of Tanzania, exhibit greater genetic diversity than all non-African populations put together. Take a moment to truly absorb that fact. Consider this. A solitary village within Africa can possess a wider range of genetic variation than can be found between a Norwegian and a Chinese individual or an Australian, Aborigine, and a Native American. So, what's the implication? It signifies that Africa serves as the origin, the very fount of life. All people living beyond Africa trace their lineage back to a small band of travelers, a genetic constriction point that held merely a portion of Africa's overall genetic variety. Consider Africa, the Grand Library. The remainder of the globe received just a handful of its volumes. This isn't mere conjecture. This truth is etched into our very DNA, consistently reproduced in one study after another, and affirmed by every significant genetic investigation into human populations. Africa isn't simply our point of origin. It's also the reason for our immense diversity and, quite paradoxically, why those outside Africa share such genetic similarities. But now, let's consider the aspect that truly makes us rethink our long-held beliefs concerning human history. Homo sapiens didn't simply emerge and instantly dominate the globe. Instead, we remained within Africa for more than 200,000 years. Just ponder that immense span of time. Our species first appeared approximately 300,000 years ago, give or take a few millennia. Yet, we didn't depart Africa in substantial quantities until roughly 70,000 to 50,000 years before our time. That represents 250,000 years spent residing on the continent of our origin, a lengthy, gradual period of development, during which something profoundly important was taking shape, not our physical forms, but rather our intellects, our societal norms, our ability for abstract reasoning. The supporting evidence is subtle, yet deeply significant. Within Blombo's cave, located in South Africa, archaeologists brought to light something truly remarkable. Fragments of ochre, a reddish mineral etched with geometric designs, intricate cross-hatching, and intentional, recurring motifs. These ancient etchings are dated to approximately 100,000 years in the past. These weren't mere implements, nor were they designed for practical use. Instead, they served as symbols, revealing abstract thought and a deep human yearning to forge meaning and convey messages through visual forms. Within that very same cavern, archaeologists unearthed delicate shell beads, minuscule marine snail shells, intentionally pierced and then strung, likely as adornments or decorative pieces. This discovery dates back approximately 100,000 years. Their purpose wasn't survival. Rather, they spoke of identity, of an appreciation for beauty, and served as a way for the wearer to communicate something about themselves to their community. In essence, they were culture given a physical form. Here, we witness the cognitive revolution gradually unfolding. Language, artistic expression, symbolic representation, and ritual practices were all taking shape across Africa, as our species honed not only its capacity for thought, but also its ability to convey those thoughts to one another. Then, in the span between 70,000 and 50,000 years ago, small bands of people started their journey outwards. This monumental migration, the exodus that would ultimately see humanity spread across every continent, wasn't a sudden, singular occurrence. Instead, it was a gradual outflow, perhaps just a few hundred or a few thousand individuals, venturing from Africa through the Sinai Peninsula, or possibly tracing the southern Arabian coastline. These weren't grand explorers driven by a master plan. They were simply people pursuing migrating animals, searching for sustenance, and adjusting to unfamiliar shores and landscapes. Yet, that modest stream of humanity carried immense implications, largely due to what's known as the bottleneck effect, the reality that only a minuscule portion of Africa's total population ever departed. Consequently, populations outside of Africa exhibit significantly less genetic diversity. Indeed, every one of us traces our lineage back to that initial, small group of migrants. This includes every European, every Asian, and every indigenous Australian and American. Our forebears were all participants in that great departure. And precisely because this pioneering group was so small, they carried with them only a fraction of the vast genetic variation present in Africa at the time. This fundamental principle explains why genetic diversity diminishes the further one travels from the African continent. This observation isn't about any notion of superiority or inferiority. Rather, it's a matter of mathematics, a consequence of what we call founder effects, and the principles of population genetics. And it's at this juncture that our narrative becomes wonderfully intricate. As those initial Homo sapiens migrants ventured into Eurasia, they didn't arrive in an entirely uninhabited world. Other human species had already established themselves there. Across Europe and Western Asia, one would find the Neanderthals, who were the descendants of Homo heidelbergensis, a species that had departed Africa many hundreds of thousands of years prior and had successfully adapted to the harsh conditions of the Ice Age. With their robust, powerful builds, sizable brains, and advanced tools, they were indeed impressive survivors. Meanwhile, in Eastern Asia, another enigmatic group dwelled in relative obscurity, the Denisovans, primarily identified through DNA analysis from a single finger bone discovered within a Siberian cave. To this day, we still possess limited knowledge regarding their physical appearance, yet genetically, they were undeniably distinct, representing a sister species to. Then came the Neanderthals, and when our early human ancestors encountered these ancient relatives, a truly unexpected event transpired. They interbred. Contemporary genetic studies reveal that individuals of non-African descent possess between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA. If you happen to be of European or Asian ancestry, this likely applies to you. Moreover, certain populations in Oceania and Asia also carry Denisovan DNA, offering further proof of these ancient interbreeding events. This certainly adds a fascinating layer of complexity to our story, doesn't it? We didn't simply replace our ancient relatives. Instead, we absorbed them. Perhaps we loved them, or at the very least, we mated with them, and their genes became an enduring part of our own genetic makeup. Yet, and this is a crucial distinction, the vast majority of our genome remains purely sapiens, purely African in origin. While the Neanderthal and Denisovan contributions are indeed real, their traces are but whispers, faint echoes in our genetic tapestry. Genetically speaking, the very essence of who we are is African Homo sapiens. These interbreeding events did not, in fact, change that fundamental truth. It certainly introduced a layer of complexity, yes, but it didn't rewrite the fundamental story, and Homo sapiens' journey didn't halt in Eurasia. Once it commenced, the spread was astonishingly swift. By 40,000 years ago, humans had already reached Australia, a remarkable journey that demanded seafaring, careful planning, and immense courage. By approximately 15,000 years ago, we had successfully crossed into the Americas, populating two entirely new continents. Within a mere 50,000 years, a species that had spent 250,000 years confined to Africa had truly become global. This naturally brings forth an intriguing question. Why did Homo sapiens succeed where others did not? Neanderthals, for example, had resided in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. Homo erectus had also endured in Asia for over 1,000,000 years. Both species were intelligent, adaptable, and remarkably tough. So, why did they vanish while we flourished? One compelling explanation is what scientists refer to as the Pan-African Innovation Network theory. Africa is an immense continent, featuring an extraordinary array of environments, from dense rainforests and vast savannas to arid deserts, towering mountains, and extensive coastlines. And, most crucially, it was the home of the largest population of Homo sapiens. More people naturally meant more brains. More brains, in turn, led to more innovation. And more innovation meant better tools, more effective strategies, and superior adaptations. But it wasn't merely about sheer numbers. It was also about connection. African populations, despite being spread across such a massive continent, managed to remain in contact. Trade networks, migrations, and intermarriage all combined to create a vibrant web of cultural exchange. This allowed ideas to flow freely. An innovation in toolmaking from southern Africa could eventually reach populations in the north. A hunting strategy developed in the east could similarly spread westward. Neanderthals, by contrast, lived in smaller, more isolated populations. Europe, during the Ice Age, was a fragmented landscape of refuges separated by ice sheets and harsh terrain. Population sizes were smaller, genetic diversity was lower, and crucially, the flow of innovation was slower. It's not that Neanderthals weren't smart. They absolutely were. They made sophisticated tools, controlled fire, cared for their sick, buried their dead. But they lacked the critical mass of interconnected populations that sapiens had. Cooperation and culture became our secret weapons. Sapiens developed complex social networks that enabled rapid adaptation and knowledge transfer. We didn't just learn from our own experiences, we learned from each other. Across generations, across vast distances, we built on accumulated knowledge in ways that accelerated innovation exponentially. And we had language, not simple communication. Animals have that. But complex recursive language capable of expressing abstract concepts, hypothetical scenarios, and shared mythologies allowed us to coordinate in large groups to plan for the future and teach intricate skills. It was the ultimate cognitive edge, refined over tens of thousands of years in Africa. By the time sapiens left Africa, we weren't just anatomically modern, we were cognitively modern, culturally modern, and that made all the difference. Now, it's worth pausing here to address some complications in the narrative, because science is never as clean as we'd like. In 2019, researchers announced the discovery of Danuvius guggenossi, an 11.6 million-year-old ape found in Germany. Analysis of its bones suggested it might have been bipedal, or at least capable of upright walking. If true, this would mean bipedalism evolved outside Africa long before our African ancestors stood up. Does this upend everything? Not really. It complicates but doesn't contradict. Bipedalism may have evolved multiple times in different lineages. Danuvius, if it was indeed bipedal, represents a European ape experiment that eventually went extinct. It's not our ancestor. The bipedalism that led to humans still evolved in Africa, in our lineage, under the specific environmental pressures we've discussed. Convergent evolution. Evolution, where similar traits evolve independently, is common in nature. And here's another complication. Homo erectus lived in Eurasia for over 1 million years. Why didn't they become human in the modern sense? The answer is they did evolve, just not into us. Homo erectus populations in Europe likely contributed to the Neanderthal lineage. Populations in Asia may have given rise to Denisovans and other archaic humans. They didn't stay static. They adapted, changed, evolved into new forms suited to their environments, but they didn't become Homo sapiens. That happened in Africa, along a different evolutionary path, under different pressures. And this brings us back to the power of Africa's environment. Constant climatic variability, oscillating between wet and dry periods, forests expanding and contracting, savas appearing and disappearing. This wasn't a stable paradise. It was a pressure cooker. Human groups were compelled to constantly adjust, to innovate, or face extinction. Significantly, the sheer scale of Africa ensured that even through difficult times, places of refuge could be found. Communities might shrink, endure, and then flourish once more as circumstances became favorable. This recurring pattern of challenge and sanctuary, unfolding across countless millennia, sculpted a species able to adjust to nearly any situation. Genetic research consistently reaffirms this African genesis, regardless of the intricate details we continue to unearth. Each newly sequenced genome, every ancient DNA specimen examined, every demographic investigation undertaken invariably points back to Africa. While the specifics grow more elaborate and chronologies become more precise, the core reality endures. Our species originated in Africa, a fact that carries deep significance for our contemporary understanding of ourselves. We constitute a single species, a unified family stemming from a singular, recent common ancestor. The notion of biological races, or separate human subspecies, simply fails to withstand genetic examination. As a species, we are too nascent and too interwoven. The genetic diversity found within any single human group surpasses the average distinctions observed between different populations. The outward physical variations we observe, such as skin tone, hair type, and facial characteristics, represent superficial adjustments to specific local surroundings, governed by a minuscule portion of our genetic code. Beneath these aesthetic distinctions, our fundamental shared humanity is both deep and unquestionable. Should your lineage trace back to Europe, your forebears departed Africa approximately 50,000 years prior. If your heritage is East Asian, that journey might have occurred around 60,000 years ago. For those with indigenous Australian roots, the departure could be as far back as 65,000 years ago. In the grand sweep of evolutionary history, these are mere blinks of an eye. Ultimately, we are all descendants of Africa, having ventured from our ancestral home for a relatively brief span. This truth holds valuable insights for the challenges we face today. The rich tapestry of Africa's genetic, cultural, and environmental variations nurtured our triumph as a species. Far from being a flaw to be conquered, diversity was a profound asset. It served as the driving force behind innovation, the wellspring of our capacity to adapt. When we embrace diversity in the modern era, we are, in essence, not merely adhering to political correctness, but rather paying homage to the very essence that shaped our humanity. Our forebears navigated numerous ice ages, significant climatic transformations, and ecological disasters by means of collaboration and the transmission of cultural wisdom. In confronting our contemporary climate emergency, that historical lesson echoes powerfully. We have previously overcome existential threats through collective effort, by disseminating solutions among different groups, and by adapting as one. We possess the inherent evolutionary tools. We simply need to recall how to employ them. Furthermore, a point frequently disregarded is that human evolution remains an active process. We continue to adapt, to transform. For instance, communities residing at high altitudes in Tibet have developed genetic modifications to cope with reduced oxygen levels over the past few millennia. Certain groups have acquired the ability to digest lactose into adulthood, a characteristic absent just 10,000 years ago. We are perpetually reacting to our surroundings, continually evolving in the present moment. Our narrative is far from concluded. We are currently experiencing segments of an enduring epic that commenced in Africa countless millennia ago. Therefore, when the question arises, why did our evolution exclusively unfold in Africa? The response extends beyond mere geography, climate, or happenstance. It pertains to an ideal convergence of elements that fostered the circumstances for something truly remarkable. Consider the geological dynamism of the Rift Valley, the fluctuating climatic conditions that necessitated adaptability, and the sheer expanse and varied nature of the continent, which facilitated both exploration and interaction. Those safe havens that shielded us from extinction during challenging times. Africa is more than just our ancestral home. It's the very reason for our triumph. Each language we speak now, be it Mandarin, English, Swahili, or Spanish, finds its origins in ancient African dialects. Every human accomplishment, from cultural milestones to technological breakthroughs, artistic expressions, and profound philosophical thoughts, all stand upon groundwork established in Africa across countless millennia. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza, a marvel constructed on African soil, or the European Renaissance, a flourishing of creativity brought forth by the descendants of those who migrated from Africa. From India's Taj Mahal to China's Great Wall, and the ancient civilizations of the Americas, all were crafted by hands bearing African DNA, by minds honed through African evolution. When you gaze upon another person, no matter their origin or appearance, you're seeing a kin, a cousin, separated by merely 2,000 or 3,000 generations at most. Within the vast expanse of evolutionary history, it feels as though we all departed the family gathering just moments ago. This understanding doesn't diminish the vibrant tapestry of human cultures. It certainly doesn't lessen the distinct charm of various traditions and lifestyles. Rather, it imbues them with a profounder significance. We are a single family, having diversified remarkably, adapted ingeniously, and forged innumerable expressions of what it means to be human. Yet, we remain fundamentally, genetically, and undeniably linked, as you gently drift off to sleep tonight. Perhaps this is the idea to hold close. You are the culmination of millions of years of African ingenuity, your ability to think, to articulate, to envision, to dream. These very traits were sculpted in the Rift Valley, honed across the African savannas, and brought to perfection over innumerable generations, long before your forebears ever ventured beyond the continent. In the truest sense, you are a descendant of Africa. We all are. And this shared legacy, this common genesis, this undeniable biological oneness is more than just a scientific observation. It serves as an invitation to perceive one another as kin, to acknowledge that our distinctions are recent, skin-deep, and wonderfully diverse. Conversely, our similarities are ancient, deeply significant, and foundational. Africa bestowed upon us everything. The upright stance that liberated our hands, the expansive brains that allowed us to ponder, and the language that enabled us to communicate those marvels. The social connections that ensured our survival, the creativity that empowered us to flourish, the enduring resilience that saw us through ice ages, droughts, and every conceivable hardship the world presented. With every step you take, you tread on feet formed in Africa. Every thought you conceive, you do so with a brain crafted in Africa. Every word you utter, you speak with a voice resonating with African beginnings. We didn't merely evolve on the African continent. We truly became human there. And regardless of how far we've roamed, or how long we've been absent, we bear that African heritage within every cell, every gene, every pulse of our being. This isn't merely history. It is our very essence. Chapter 6. Concluding thoughts and reflections on Africa's legacy and our collective future. So, here we stand, having journeyed through 66 million years of evolutionary narrative. Having followed the trajectory from minuscule, shrew-like survivors of an asteroid catastrophe to the 7 billion individuals now dispersed across every landmass and isle on our planet, we finally reach a conclusion. Why did our evolution exclusively unfold in Africa? The query itself seems almost too vast for contemplation. It embraces geology, and genetics, climate and serendipity, isolation and ingenuity. Yet, if we step back and consider the whole, as we reflect on our shared journey, a distinct pattern comes into view. It's not a straightforward pattern, as evolution rarely provides easy solutions, yet it's entirely understandable. This is a narrative etched into rocks, bones, and our very DNA. Africa stood apart, not in a way that made it better, not destined by fate or some grand design, but rather unique in aspects that profoundly influenced the specific evolutionary trajectory. Let's gently revisit this path, allowing each element to find its proper position. 66 million years ago, an asteroid collided with the Yucatan Peninsula, unleashing power equivalent to 1 billion nuclear bombs. The dinosaurs perished. Our planet was engulfed in flames, then plunged into ice, before gradually, and with great difficulty, life began anew. Amidst the devastation, our forebears, small primates, no bigger than rodents, found refuge in the trees. They weren't extraordinary, simply fortunate, possessing just enough adaptability to endure the ordeal. For the subsequent 40 million years, these primates underwent significant changes. They developed forward-facing eyes for judging distance, hands capable of gripping for moving through branches, and larger brains to interpret the intricate, three-dimensional world of the forest's upper layers. And here's the intriguing detail we touched upon earlier. The more advanced primates, the anthropoids, initially emerged in Asia, not on the African continent. Our ancient ancestors journeyed westward to Africa, seeking sanctuary within its equatorial woodlands, while their Asian relatives slowly vanished due to the impact of colder climates and shifting environments. Africa transformed into a haven, a region where primates could branch out, innovate, and persist. Then, in the period spanning 10 to 7 million years ago, an exceptional event unfolded. The East African Rift System, a colossal geological fissure dissecting the continent, gave rise to a varied tapestry of habitats. Lush forests in some areas, expansive savannas in others, elevated volcanic regions, and pristine freshwater lakes, a rich blend of distinct microclimates concentrated within a comparatively confined space. Such a phenomenon wasn't occurring elsewhere, not with this particular force, this breadth of variety, or this unique blend of constancy and transformation. Within that diverse landscape, certain apes began to assume an upright posture. Bipedalism, the act of moving on 2 feet. It feels so intrinsic to our humanity that we often overlook its peculiar nature, its scarcity, and its groundbreaking significance. Sahelanthropus, Orrorin, Ardipithecus, and the Auranopithecines. Across countless millennia, various ancestral lines explored this novel method of locomotion. A few found success, but the majority did not. However, those that prevailed acquired a truly invaluable advantage: enhanced efficiency, the capacity to traverse vast expanses without becoming fatigued, the skill to transport items, provisions, implements, offspring across broken terrain, the capacity to perceive greater distances, navigate more intelligently, and adjust more swiftly. Upright walking. It liberated the hands, and these unburdened hands were then able to interact with their surroundings in manners no other ape species had ever conceived. Yet, the crucial point is this: it occurred in Africa because only that continent possessed the ideal circumstances. The diverse environmental tapestry that favored adaptability. The deep rift valleys, which fostered isolated groups, thereby enabling evolutionary trials. Its location near the equator, which offered a climatic sanctuary even as glacial periods enveloped. The higher latitudes. While other landmasses boasted woodlands and other continents featured sweeping grasslands, it was Africa alone that possessed this unique confluence of geological and climatic elements, aligning precisely when it mattered most. Subsequently, our own genus, Homo, emerged the skilled tool creators, the masters of fire, the profound thinkers. Approximately 2 million millennia passed, cranial capacity began to expand. This wasn't a minor increase. It was a dramatic enlargement. Consider Homo habilis, with their rudimentary stone implements, and Homo erectus, who wielded sophisticated hand axes, expertly managed fire, and possessed the capacity to engage in cooperative hunting and strategic foresight. These shifts transcended mere physical alterations. They represented profound cognitive transformations. We saw the growth of the prefrontal cortex, the emergence of language, and the ability for abstract reasoning to envision possibilities that had not yet materialized, and then to collaborate in making them a reality. Furthermore, indeed, Homo erectus embarked on a journey out of Africa approximately 1.8 million years ago. They ventured into Eurasia, flourishing across the continent for more than 1 million years. Their existence was marked by success, adaptability, and resilience. In Europe, they gave rise to Neanderthals, and in Asia, to Denisovans. However, and this is vital, evolution within Africa continued unabated. The continent's vast diversity, immense scale, varied environments, and interconnected communities fostered what scholars term a Pan-African innovation network. Through this system, concepts, genetic material, and technological advancements could circulate among different groups. Communities might diverge, explore new ideas, and then reunite to exchange their discoveries. Africa functioned as an immense evolutionary crucible, and it was within this crucible, 300,000 years ago, that we, Homo sapiens, emerged characterized by our slender skeletons, elevated foreheads, and distinct chins, possessing brains averaging 1,500 cubic centimeters. While not significantly larger than those of Neanderthals, our brains were structured uniquely, predisposed for language, symbolism, and culture in manners that would ultimately prove revolutionary. For a span of 200,000 years, we remained within Africa. This wasn't due to being confined. Rather, it was a deliberate choice, or perhaps the absence of sufficient evolutionary impetus to compel our departure. We possessed all necessary resources, and throughout this extensive period of development, we cultivated something truly remarkable. This included intricate cultural practices, abstract artistic expressions, symbolic thought, and the capacity to convey knowledge not solely genetically, but also through instruction, narrative, and the collective wisdom inherited across generations. When our eventual departure from Africa occurred, roughly 70,000 to 50,000 years ago, we brought this comprehensive cultural toolkit along, and it proved utterly decisive. In a mere 30,000 years, we had expanded our presence across every habitable landmass. During this expansion, we encountered both Neanderthals and Denisovans, and in the majority of instances, assimilated them. While a small amount of intermingling occurred, with about 1 to 4% of non-African genetic material containing Neanderthal traces, the overwhelming essence of our genetic and cognitive makeup remains distinctly sapiens, originating solely from Africa. Our genetic blueprint offers irrefutable proof. Mitochondrial DNA, inherited through the maternal line, points directly to an African origin, approximately 150,000 years in the past. Similarly, the Y chromosomal DNA, transmitted from fathers, indicates the very same geographical origin around that period. What's truly remarkable is that contemporary African populations exhibit a greater genetic variety than all other global populations put together. What profound implications does this hold? It signifies that all people beyond Africa trace their lineage to a small group of migrants, possibly only a few thousand souls, while Africa itself preserved the complete range of human genetic diversity. We are, every one of us, African, not merely in a figurative sense, but truly, genetically, and without question. Each individual living on Earth today, irrespective of their birthplace, spoken tongue, or physical appearance, can trace their ancestral roots back to Africa within the last 100 millennia. This time frame is remarkably recent. In the grand scope of evolution, it's as if it happened just yesterday. We are a singular species, a unified family, sharing a common and recent point of origin, and this truth holds immense significance. Indeed, its importance cannot be overstated. For in a time marked by fragmentation, by tribal loyalties, and by artificial boundaries separating us from them, our shared African heritage serves as an undeniable testament. There is no them. There is only us. The notion of biological race, the belief that humankind can be neatly categorized into distinct, significant groups based on outward physical characteristics, lacks any scientific foundation. Instead, it is a societal construct, not an inherent biological truth. The genetic variations observed between, say, a Kenyan and a Norwegian are insignificant when contrasted with the genetic diversity found within African communities alone. As a species, we are simply too young to have developed substantial genetic divergence, too deeply interconnected, and too recently departed from our common birthplace. This understanding transcends mere academic theory. It resonates on a deeply personal level. The narrative we've followed across vast stretches of time, from the creatures who endured asteroid impacts, to our bipedal ape ancestors, and finally to a civilization spanning the entire globe. This is your very own story. Your ancient forebears first walked upright in the Great Rift Valley of East Africa. It was your ancestors who fashioned the earliest stone implements. They adorned cave walls with ochre, shared tales by flickering firelight, and gazed at the stars with a sense of profound wonder. Each breakthrough, every adaptation, every instance of hard-earned survival, this entire heritage resides within your very cells. It's present in the architecture of your skeleton, perfectly suited for walking on two legs, and in the intricate pathways of your brain, molded by eons of social collaboration. It's etched into your DNA, where the indelible mark of Africa remains on every chromosome. And Africa itself, the very birthplace of humankind, is far more than a mere historical detail. It is a vibrant, ever-evolving continent, brimming with extraordinary innovation, enduring resilience, and a rich tapestry of cultural wealth and diversity that nurtured our development. This profound genetic, linguistic, and ecological richness persists to this day. Africa embraces more than 3,000 unique ethnic communities within its borders. With over 2,000 languages spoken, it is a land of sprawling metropolises and time-honored customs, of pioneering technology and profound ecological wisdom. To perceive Africa solely through the lens of our origins is to overlook a significant portion of its narrative. It is also very much our present and our future. The insights gleaned from our evolutionary odyssey resonate with particular urgency in our current times. Our forebears endured profound climatic transformations, including ice ages, periods of drought, and environmental cataclysms that would have annihilated less adaptable life forms. How did they manage such feats? They achieved this through collaboration, through the communal exchange of knowledge, and through a rich tapestry of diversity, both genetic and behavioral, which empowered various groups to explore a multitude of survival approaches. Today, we confront our own climate challenges, our own environmental shifts. Yet, the very same evolutionary tools that guided our forebears through their trials remain at our disposal. We possess an innate ability to collaborate across the globe. Our minds are wonderfully flexible, allowing us to innovate, to adjust, and to alter our path when established methods no longer serve us. Our diversity, be it cultural, intellectual, or genetic, isn't a cause for discord, but rather a deep wellspring of answers. The true query is whether we will embrace these inherent strengths, whether we will recall our shared lineage from that singular African tree. Caring for our environment holds profound significance here. The very ecosystems that brought us into being, the majestic rift valleys, the ancient forests, the sprawling grasslands, sculpted both our physical forms and our intellects across countless millennia. We are, in essence, creations of Earth's rich biodiversity, and now, in what feels like a mere blink of geological time, we have grown to be. Potent enough to dismantle that very biodiversity, to homogenize ecosystems, and to push species into oblivion at speeds unparalleled since the asteroid impact that ended the age of dinosaurs. A certain cyclical irony exists here, a poetic balance or imbalance, entirely contingent on our choices. It was the sheer variety of life on this planet that allowed us to exist. How we manage this precious inheritance will dictate the future possibilities for all the species and ecosystems that follow us. But let us now broaden our view even more. Let's truly marvel at the profound unlikelihood, the breathtaking wonder of this entire saga. 66 million years ago, a colossal asteroid collided with our planet. Had its trajectory been altered by mere moments, striking the deep ocean rather than the shallow seas, the resulting devastation might have been far less severe. The mighty dinosaurs could have endured. Mammals, in turn, might have stayed diminutive, nocturnal, and insignificant. All that came after primates, apes, and ultimately humans might never have unfolded. Yet, the impact occurred, and mammals, against the odds, persevered. Then, across immeasurable spans of time, through innumerable generations, surviving extinctions, flourishing in radiations, undertaking vast migrations, and undergoing profound adaptations, a unique lineage arose, capable of reflecting upon its own past and ponder the why. On a single continent, defying cosmic probabilities, consciousness itself awakened. Self-awareness, the capacity to gaze upon the cosmos and discern our position within it, to craft art, music, and mathematics, to experience love, sorrow, and profound curiosity. This is Africa's enduring legacy to us. Not merely bodies honed for bipedal locomotion, nor just minds adept at language, but the very essence of what it means to be human. In its most complete form, this means being interconnected to one another, to our shared history, and to the vibrant living world that brought us forth. So, what lies ahead? Our evolutionary journey is far from over. We continue to transform, to adjust. While cultural evolution now progresses much faster than genetic shifts, the selective forces we encounter have changed. Illness, technological advancements, and intricate social structures now play their part. Nevertheless, evolution persists. Who will we be in another 100,000 years? Or even a million? Will we still recognize the beings we've become? Will the memory of Africa still resonate within us? These remain unanswered inquiries. The future is yet to be penned, but the past is remarkably lucid. It is etched into fossils, encoded within our genes, and safeguarded in volcanic ash and ancient implements of stone. Our origins lie in Africa. Every single one of us. As you gently drift into slumber tonight, picture that immense chain of ancestors, extending back through the annals of time, spanning thousands of generations and millions of years. Each individual in that chain endured long enough to procreate, to transmit their genetic legacy, contributing to the continuous thread that ultimately led to you. The probabilities against your very existence are truly astronomical. And yet, here you are, the culmination of an evolutionary odyssey that commenced in the ancient forests and savannas of Africa. A journey molded by dramatic rift valleys and fluctuating climates, honed through collective effort and ingenious solutions. Now, envision the African savanna as dusk descends, the sky ablaze with hues of orange and purple, acacia trees standing in stark silhouette. Somewhere in the fading light, a small band of early humans, your distant ancestors, moves purposefully across the grasslands, walking upright, carrying their simple tools, tending to their offspring. They are unaware they are forging history. Their sole focus is survival, to locate sustenance and see another day. Yet, their footprints, imprinted 3.6 million years ago, will endure, perfectly preserved in the volcanic ash at Laetoli, and their progeny would, indeed, inherit the earth. You stand as the culmination of millions of years of African ingenuity, of serendipitous geological events, relentless climatic forces, and the indomitable spirit of life itself. That continent resides within you, etched into your very bones, your DNA, and the fundamental architecture of your thoughts. Always remember this truth. Should you delve into your lineage, tracing your family's roots as far as documented history permits, then envision that journey extending further through the veils of time, past the dawn of writing and farming, beyond the great exodus from Africa, through the extensive evolutionary span of Homo sapiens, all the way back to the initial bipedal ape who first stood tall in the Rift Valley. Should the chance arise, consider a journey to Africa. Tread upon the very ground your forebears once roamed. Embrace that profound connection and revere our ancestral home. Contribute to conservation initiatives. Resist the divisive influences that seek to persuade us we are distinct species rather than a single family. Embrace diversity, recognizing it as the powerful evolutionary asset it truly represents. Should this exploration through vast stretches of time have resonated with you, perhaps consider subscribing. Many more tales await, further profound explorations into history, into scientific understanding, and into the overarching saga of our existence. Explore the playlist for additional content on evolution and other episodes crafted to gently guide you into slumber as you ponder the universe's marvels and our position within it. This narrative is built upon decades of paleoanthropological inquiry, genetic investigations, and archaeological findings. It incorporates the tireless efforts of innumerable scientists who have unearthed fossils in the East African Rift, scrutinized ancient DNA, and meticulously assembled the intricate puzzle of human beginnings. Their collective endeavors have gifted us this account, our shared history. My gratitude for accompanying me on this expedition, for dedicating these hours to traversing 66 million years of history, and for your curiosity regarding our origins and their significance. Allow this final reflection to accompany you into slumber. Our journey as a species commenced in Africa. Each language, every culture, and indeed every triumph of human civilization finds its roots in that singular continent. We are all inheritors of its legacy, the capacity for upright walking, for expansive intellect, for collaboration, and for cultural development. Fundamentally, we are all African. The distinctions we observe, variations in skin tone, facial characteristics, the myriad forms of human appearance, are recent adaptations to diverse local environments, essentially superficial alterations overlaid upon a fundamentally uniform genetic design. Beneath these surface-level disparities, we remain a single people, one species, one family. This assertion is not a political declaration, but rather an established scientific truth. In a world seemingly intent on fracturing us, on delineating boundaries, erecting barriers, and emphasizing distinctions, perhaps this singular fact is the most crucial insight we can retain. Now, find your rest. Allow the soft melodies to envelop you. Picture the breeze sweeping across the ancient African savannas, bringing with it the fragrance of grasses and recent rain. Envision your forebears, all our ancestors, gazing skyward at the very same stars visible to us tonight, pondered the identical questions that continue to intrigue us. We represent the universe's awakening to its own existence. We are the legacy Africa bestowed upon the world, and that narrative, that astonishing, unlikely, and magnificent story persists within you. May you sleep soundly, rest,